We love the Phillies. Do we love the Flyers? Do we love the Flyers? And do we love what the Flyers are doing? I mentioned at the top of the show, 3 points out of a potential 4 over the weekend. A huge win on Saturday. A huge win. Bobby Brink with the shootout winner. And then the next day, they take on Ottawa. And that game goes to overtime. And they do lose that game. But what are we doing? Adam Glickus over here says, in all caps, I love my Flyers. I got to be honest. The Flyers are a little bit irritating right now. And it's pretty much for the reasons that you would expect. But, like, I have a really hard time with this. And everybody knows where I'm at. I've been here for a long time. The Flyers aren't going to be able to get themselves elite talent if they're picking at number 9. Or if they have the 9th best odds and then they get jumped by 2 teams and now they're picking at 11. See, there's this thing that I just feel like I need to do like an evergreen clip from this show. Like at some point, I feel like I just need to have a clip that can clearly and succinctly explain to some people who are just, I don't know, too dumb. I'm starting to think that it's just dumb, or too dumb to understand why people want to see the Flyers finish with better odds of getting the number 1 overall pick, which is to say, finish with a higher draft position. It's not about winning the number 1 overall pick. Because there's nobody right now in this draft, as I stand here on Monday, April 14th, the year of our Lord 2025, that says there is a generational talent in this draft. There's not. As of right now, what all the pundits say, what all the scouts say, there is no Connor McDavid. There is no Sidney Crosby. There is no Alex Ovechkin. There is no, if you want to consider, Connor Bedard in this draft. There's not an Austin Matthews in this draft. There is nobody who really, truly moves the needle in a high-impact way right now in this draft. Schaefer, the top defenseman in the draft, appears at the top of the board for a lot of people. Then you have any combination of centers and a couple of wings at the top over the next 4 or 5 picks. And they could all be good. And on Saturday on the Press Row Show, we had Adam Kimmelman on from NHL.com, and he talked about, McQueen is going to be the guy who's like the ultimate boomer bust. There is a reason to believe that at his size, 6'4", 6'5", playing center, if he's healthy, if he gets a good health status update, that he could be the steal of the draft. But if those injury concerns are real and if those issues persist, he's an ultimate bust. That is a risk that a team is going to have to take on. I find myself in the same place that I always have. You want to essentially hedge against the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is that in the draft lottery, 2 teams jump ahead of you. That's it. I don't care about the difference in percentages for where you can finish. If you're at number 4 versus number 6, it doesn't matter. It is a negligible difference in the NHL in terms of getting that number 1 overall pick. I'm going to bring up the Tankathon site just to illustrate the point, because again, I feel like so many people, for whatever reason, they just really struggle. And there's a certain demo, I would say, of people that just don't seem to get it. And they're also the ones who are thrilled that the Flyers are winning games here late in the season because it's good to teach the guys how to win. Okay. So this is the simple version of this, okay? The reason that people like me would like to see the Flyers finish higher in the draft lottery isn't for the number 1 overall pick. If they get it, great. If they don't, that's fine too. It's not about the percentages, because take a goosey gander at the percentages, right? The Flyers right now wake up on April 14th with the 6th best odds of getting the number 1 overall pick, but that's not what counts. It's a 7.5% chance of winning. You move up to number 5 at where Seattle's at right now, it's an 8.5. You move up to number 4 where Boston is, it's a 9.5% chance. Any of those teams could potentially get to number 4, my friends, okay? Number 7, where Buffalo is right now, 6.5% chance. These teams are all clumped together. Philly could just as easily finish at that number 4 spot as they could all the way down at 7 or even potentially 8, okay? Worst case scenario for the Flyers is they win their last 2 games and they finish at number 9. It's not about the percentage of getting the number 1 overall pick. It's about what happens if you finish at number 6 and you get jumped by Buffalo and Pittsburgh, who take number 1 and number 2. Now your team number 8 in what many consider to be a 5 or 6 player draft. That's the problem. And for some reason, there are a lot of thick-headed Flyers fans who I think just have some version of Stockholm syndrome, who are just like, no, it's okay. You can't tell teams to lose. Nobody's telling them to. You can't tell players to lose. Nobody's telling them to. Well, you can't. It doesn't matter. They need to win. They need to win every game they can. They have to go out. Winning is good. Winning is good. Winning is good. The culture. And by the way, you have a low chance. Low chance of winning the number 1 overall pick anyway. You have such a low chance anyway. 8.5% chance. You finish at number 4. It's only 9.5% chance of winning the draft lottery. Winning the number 1 overall pick. Why do you want these guys to lose for a 9.5% chance of winning the number 1 overall pick? Because it's not about the number 1 overall pick, dumbass. It's about making sure that you finish in that top 6, preferably the top 4 or 5. And if you finish at number 4, the worst case scenario where you get jumped by 2 teams takes you down to number 6 in a 6-player draft. That's why people want to see the Flyers lose. That's why people want to see the Flyers end up at that number 4 spot. It's not about, we're going to go from a 7.5% chance of winning the lottery to a 9.5% chance. It's a 3% difference. We don't care. I don't care. But I would much rather be in a position where you can draft one of those top players. Now, listen, McQueen might end up being the steal of the draft, as I just mentioned. Big body, plays a premium position. And if he's healthy, maybe he becomes your karmic payback, your karmic justice for Nolan Patrick's career going sideways because of concussions. It'd be swell. But maybe not. I don't know if I'd want to take that risk. But I also don't want to see the Flyers reach for a pick at number 6 or at number 7. So again, I'd like them to finish higher so they can be in the mix and have their choice of a few different players and maybe get the best guy on the board and get a guy who maybe isn't ready to contribute immediately next season, but is maybe only a year away instead of like 4 years away. And I don't think that's asking a lot. I don't think that's a crazy position to take. Now, if you talk to people on Facebook or on Twitter, there are some people who seem to think that that's a psychotic take because some people are just simpletons. But it's really not that complicated. At least I don't think it's that complicated. Listen, I think you could make a case that upper management waited too long to trade Frost and Farabee, and that they could have done that last offseason, had a couple of kids playing in their spot, or had a couple of bottom-feeding players, bottom 6 or bottom 9 forwards or whatever, bottom 6 forwards that are going to rotate between the 3rd and 4th line, and maybe it makes the Flyers a worse team from the start. They never feel like they have a chance to compete. Maybe Torts doesn't melt down the way that he apparently did. Doesn't cost himself the job. The team still hates him. They finish out the season on a cold streak. That actually is like the one thing that drives me absolutely insane, okay? I've seen a bunch of people who said, well, they should have kept Torts. Go back on this show. Go back on this show or on YouTube or the clip where I broke down what the guys from Chicklets said and what I had kind of been hearing about the York and Torts confrontation. If any of it is true, Tortorella could not stay. If there was any kind of a potential physical altercation, which again, I did not get the feeling is what happened, but if there was a physical altercation of any kind, he can't stay. If he did threaten to bury a player long-term and try to convince him not to re-sign here, that is kind of sticking it to your front office. I could understand them saying he can't stay. But there are people now who are just like, oh, well, they should have just kept Torts. That's not how this works. And I did ask over the weekend on Twitter. I said, listen, I get that people are upset that the Flyers are winning games. I am also upset that they're costing themselves draft position. And at the same time, what do you want them to do? They traded 5 roster players. They fired the head coach. They don't exactly have a ton of talent on the roster. And yet the talent seems to be a lot more light on their feet. They seem to be a team that has had a massive weight taken off their back. What are you to do? And if there was something that happened with the coach that was so egregious that they felt like they had to fire him, he couldn't stay. So what would you like them to do now? What would you like them to do so that the Flyers for the next 2 games lose? You can't healthy scratch Matvei Mishkov. Imagine, like, you can't. The league would have it out for you. So, like, what's the plan? What are you going to do? Who are you going to sit? What are you going to tell Bradshaw? What are you going to tell the players? Fuck it, guys. I know we can't ask you to lose. Go lose. What do you think is going to happen? You have to deal with reality at some point. And again, I would love to see the Flyers finish number 4, have a chance to get to number 1 or number 2, or remain at number 4, or at worst, fall to number 6. The ultimate bad case scenario here, if you're a Flyers fan, is that you've gone through a very bad season, a somewhat delusional part of the season, a very bad section or 2 of the season, and that you had to suffer through a lot of losing. Some people who love Torts were very upset that he got fired. And then you saw your team rebound and start to play really well at the end of the season. All of that and all of those torn emotions could ultimately result to you falling out of that top 6 and no longer getting what's considered one of the higher echelon players in the draft, albeit not a franchise cornerstone. It's kind of a mess. That would be a pretty shitty end of the season.